Welcome to Going for the Green. As you can tell, we have a special guest. Brentley Romine is joining the show because Denny's out somewhere eating gyros and putting his toes in the sand. Brentley, before we get into the tournaments, I do have to do another little pat on my back for smashing Davis Thompson. Excuse me. That outright was glorious. He went out there and set a tournament record. We also hit Aaron Rye top 20. And obviously, if Davis Thompson's going to win the tournament, he's going to finish inside the top 20. How are things going for you? And thank you for joining the show.
Well, Brad, thanks for having me on. I'm glad you congratulated yourself because I was going to point out the fact that you absolutely nailed Davis Thompson. I was on him too, although not publicly, but I hope to bring a little bit of expertise, hopefully, and maybe give a few winners this week.
Absolutely. Well, let's kick things off. Let's go to Evian Championship. I'm going to go back to the well with Ayaka Furtaway. I took her in the last major, and I was a little, I guess I wasn't fully fulfilled on the destiny that I had called. I was manifesting it. After the second round, she couldn't pull through. She kind of fell off. But I'm going to back her again at plus 2,000, 20-1 there. At this golf course, you're going to need great ball striking, and I think she presents a lot of that skill here. Third in driving accuracy. She's 12th in green and regulation percentage. And also at majors, big-time golf tournaments, you want golfers who are consistent. She has the most top 10 finishes on the tour, 8 and 16 starts, and a great putter, top 20 in putting average.
Yeah, Brad, she's certainly been a bright spot. And, you mentioned this tournament, being good in majors. I think this is an event that maybe runs against the grain in what we've seen with KPMG or U.S. Women's Open, and that really the winners have gone historically low. In 10 years since this event's been a major championship, we've had double-digit winning score under par all but 1 year. And that year it was 9 under. That was only a 54-hole tournament. So I like your Ayaka pick. She also leads the LPGA in birdies, but I'm going to go a little bit more of a long shot here, and that's Leona Maguire at plus 4,000, 40-1. Hasn't had the best of seasons. She has no top 10s this year in stroke play events on the LPGA, but you might ask, well, why? I mean, she's only got 3 career top 10s in majors as well. I actually did a little bit of research, and I texted our good friend Beth Ann Nichols, who covers the LPGA more than any other writer, reporter, the great writer at Golf Week. And she actually said that Leona said that she found something at the KPMG at Sahalee a couple of weeks ago, ends up translating that into a victory at the Aramco Team Series event in London. So she's coming off a win. I like that momentum. And the Evian always seems to be a major where players kind of come, maybe not out of nowhere, but they really have their coming out party. Case in point, Celine Boudier last year. I think Leona can get it done and win that first major title this week in France.
It's an exciting price for Leona at 40-1. Let's kick it over to the Scottish Open, played at the Renaissance Club. I'm going to start things off because, I don't mind being the chalk goblin. Call me Mr. Chalk. I'm going with Rory McIlroy. Before anybody goes heads and they fight me on this, we know there's never been a repeat winner, a back-to-back winner. No one successfully defended their title here. But this is a course, the Tom Doak designed course, that I think just fits so well for McIlroy's game. And I don't mind that he had that terrible kind of blow up at the US Open to not win the tournament. He took some time off, was able to kind of regroup his thoughts, and he's just going to be able to tee it high, let it fly, and he can get creative with his wedges here. At 8-1, it kind of limits my ability to go further down the board. So I will only have 2 outright picks for this tournament, but I'm more than happy to bet Rory McIlroy, the guy who loves national opens. I don't think there's been any other golfer who's won more national opens than Mr. McIlroy himself.
Brad, do you have your boxing gloves ready? Because I might fight you a little bit on this Rory pick. I think historically, especially the last few years, he has done well when he's had a good major week in that next start that he's had. He's been T7 or better for pretty much the last 4 strong major showings that he's had. However, I look back to 2022. He had that very emotional close call at St. Andrews at the Open Championship. He took 4 weeks off, and then he missed the cut in Memphis to kick off the FedEx Cup playoffs that year. I think seeing how emotional Rory was following as you called it, what a blow up at Pinehurst a couple of weeks ago. I mean, peeling out of that parking lot, I thought he was going to take out a few bystanders there. I mean, he was fuming. I think that emotion reminds me, maybe not the anger, but definitely the level of emotion from St. Andrews a couple years ago. So I don't see quite the bounce back, in price tag kind of heavy. But when you look at DFS, DraftKings, kind of those high price guys, you got the Rorys, the Xanders, the Ludwigs. I actually wouldn't mind going down just a few $100s and selecting Tommy Fleetwood at 9,900. I think that gives you a little bit more flexibility if you want to load up on some of those guys in the high 7,000s or the low 8,000s. He's T6 or better in 3 of the last 4 Scottish Opens. He's played well in the past at PGA National, which I think is a good kind of close course fit to what we're going to see at the Renaissance Club. And, I think in terms of this golf course, that the wind's not going to be as whippy as we've seen it in recent years. I think they're going to get some rain, maybe a little bit of soft conditions, as soft as you can kind of get over in Scotland this time of year. And so I think it's really going to come down in this case to ball striking. And Tommy Fleetwood's driven the ball really well. I think he's positive strokes gained off the tee in every round since round 2 of the Memorial Tournament. He's T26 or better in all but 1 start since the beginning of April. The approach play has been very solid since the Masters. He kind of found something going into that tournament. So I think everything kind of lines up with this being a really great week for Tommy Fleetwood. And he hasn't won on the PGA Tour, but he's won 7 times over in Europe on the DP World Tour. So what better way to get his first PGA Tour win than a little co-sanction action here at the Scottish?
Yeah, this absolutely feels like an event that Mr. Tommy Fleetwood could win. I was going to bet on Tommy Fleetwood. So my initial thought for this tournament was I was going to take one of the high price guys, the chalk options, or I was going to spread the board, anyone from 30 to 1 and up. And to be truthfully honest, my pick in Aaron Rye was actually my first bet of the tournament. And then I pivoted to Rory, which kind of didn't give me that much room for flexibility in terms of outright betting. But it did allow me to bet on Tommy Fleetwood top 20 here. You already touched on his success at this tournament, at this course, and you also touched on this. I want to just kind of elaborate this. When he was in the Florida swing, his approach numbers were god awful, losing 8 strokes at API, another 3.3 at the Players. And then it kind of like clicked, like you said. It kind of started at Valero, but then really at Augusta, it started to look good. He had a little stumble at the RBC, fine. But then his numbers since then have been outstanding. What I love about Tommy Fleetwood, too, mind you, back 3 straight top 20 finishes. What I love about him is he's Mr. Sunday tear it down. Doesn't matter where he's at on the leaderboard. He comes out swinging. He's one of those guys who takes pride in finishing strong, which really helps a placement bet. I thought the price on him at plus 125 was absolutely must play. Tommy Fleetwood is absolutely live to win this event.
All right, well, let's go down to mid-tier options for daily fantasy. I talked about the weather earlier, and typically you kind of want to look at apex height and guys who kind of hit a low ball can hit that stinger, a la Minwoo Lee. But with it not being super blustery out there, I'm going to go with Ryan Fox. He does hit that low ball off the tee, which would play well. But I kind of like him for a different reason, and some of that is, and you can correct me if I'm wrong, but I like to kind of look at what guys are not good at. And for Ryan Fox, I mean, that's clearly been the inconsistency, at least keeping it straight off the tee. I mean, he can be wildly inaccurate at times, has a lot of power in the tank, but I think that skill may be a little bit depreciated here at the Renaissance Club. So Ryan Fox is a guy I'm definitely looking at 7,100. He's been driving it better over the last 5 anyways. I think he's gained about a stroke and a half more than he had all year leading up to that point. The putter heated up a couple of weeks ago, T17 last week in Germany. So he has been over on this side of the pond, kind of playing golf courses with a little bit slower green speed. So I think that will help him as well. And I mean, he was T12 here last year. So what's not to like about that?
Yeah, Ryan Fox, a great option, especially on this course with his wayward drive. It doesn't really, it's not all that penal. Also used to playing on this side of the pond, which helps a lot here. I'm going to go with Aaron Rye, and I kind of touched on him a little bit briefly. Aaron Rye to win the tournament plus 4,500. It's one of those situations for me. We already know the past champion, Aaron Rye, but it's a different story. I'm not going to use that as my main logic, my main handicap of Aaron Rye. It's if you knock on the door enough times, it's going to open. And it just feels like consistently Aaron Rye is knocking on the door, whether we're looking at the RBC Canadian Open, the US Open, Rocket Mortgage, where he finished runner up, John Deere, where he had the lead for most of the tournament and could not convert. And a lot of that had to do with not converting at John Deere was his poor putting, right? And that was just in the last round. He had tremendous putting numbers throughout the entire tournament, gained almost 2 strokes first round, 6 strokes the second round, another 2 in the third round. But in the fourth, he lost strokes in the putter. And it feels like it was the first time that he actually really lost strokes putting since the fourth round of the US Open. Aaron Rye is bringing his game to another level. And this consistency is the kind of consistency you see with guys who are knocking at that door for another win. Like when you think about Xander Schauffele, he had that kind of run. When you think about Justin Thomas, would Justin Thomas ever win again? He had those top 10, runner-up, run up, and then boom, wins the PGA championship. I think Aaron Rye can start being in that conversation of a guy who's going to convert some of those 36, 54 hole leads into actual titles.
Yeah, he certainly had a nice run, but in terms of daily fantasy, I the only thing I worry about is just how many guys are going to pick him.
Yeah.
And sometimes you do want to zag when everyone else zigs, and so let's get down to these kind of really low price guys. And there's a guy that I really like. He plays predominantly on the DP World Tour. I covered him in college a lot. He made a run at the 2015 U.S. Amateur that was eventually won by Bryson DeChambeau, and that's Sean Crocker, former USC product. He's 5,500 on DraftKings, and there is a lineup in play where you could get Tommy Fleetwood and potentially Ludwig Oberg if you have Sean Crocker in your lineup. That gives you a ton of flexibility to really go after some of those heavy hitters, maybe even Aaron Rye if you want to do that too. But the thing I like about Crocker is he just has this kind of tenacity about him where he really rises to the level of competition. I think a lot of people have kind of forgotten about him, and this is the perfect opportunity for him to kind of prove himself. His nickname is Young Simba. He's got a really cool tattoo on his left pectoral. It has like a roaring lion inside the state or the continent of Africa. He actually was born in Zimbabwe, so a little trivia there, even though he has the American flag next to his name. But he's been pretty consistent, which has kind of gone against the grain of what we've seen out of him in recent years. He's got 3 straight top 25s on the DP World Tour. He should have won, I thought, the Italian Open, ended up finishing T3 there. And he was T19 last year at the Scottish Open, has a lot of rounds under his belt on this golf course. If there's one thing about Sean Crocker that he's been doing that he used to do way back in the day, he's going to hit a lot of greens and he's going to make a ton of birdies. He's made 17 birdies each of his last 3 starts where he's played all 4 rounds. He missed a cut right before that, but then the event before that, he made 18 birdies. So he's going to get you a lot of points there, and could be one of those value plays that, because at 5,500, all you're looking, I think, out of those guys is, maybe get you a top 30, top 25 finish. And I think he's definitely capable of that.
Yeah, the course familiarity there for Crocker is going to be massive when you're looking at a guy who's in that $5,500 range there to kind of fill up your roster. Let's touch on the ISCO championship just briefly. I'm going to give 3 picks. I'm going to give them in succession just so I can go kind of rapid here because I thought it was 3 guys who I had to absolutely bet. Number 1, JJ Spawn, 4 professional wins, 1 on the PGA Tour. Give me win equity, a guy coming into the tournament pretty hot with a good amount of steam. Next, Carson Young. Best PGA Tour finish at John Deere Classic T5. He's great off the green. You want to have great off the tee. You're gonna have a good accuracy, 3rd in driving distance, and a good putter on bent grass. And last, Hayden Springer, 59. That's all I gotta say, right? Guy comes out 59. He can go low in birdie fests. His price was absolutely outrageous, a little higher than 50 to 1.
Yeah, Brad. I think if you look at all the PGA Tour tournaments, and all the PGA Tour layouts, this one I think has maybe the biggest statistical indicator out of arguably them all. And I think it really is play off the tee specifically. You have to hit it far, driving distance. And you look at kind of the past winners that have won this tournament, whether it was Vincent Norman last year. I mean, he's a prolific driver of the golf ball. That's his skill. Trey Mullinax the year before that was top 10 distance, top 25 strokes gained off the tee. Grayson Murray also has won this tournament in the past, and that was his bread and butter. So I think an interesting thing to follow, and I think the zagging has kind of been the theme of this episode. But a lot of guys are going to be on Luke Clanton, and for good reason. I mean, he's the first amateur since 1958 to have back-to-back top 10s on the PGA Tour. But I think history, in terms of, especially with him being the favorite and the highest priced guy in DraftKings, like history tells us that he's not going to be top 10. So why would you bet him at that price? Instead, I'll go with Michael Thorbjornsen. Again, his best skill off the tee. He was fifth in strokes gained off the tee last week at the John Deere. He's 10,300. I wouldn't mind going with him. I think further down, you talk about, we talked about Sean Crocker earlier, his college teammate at USC, Rico Hoey. He's in the field. He's been playing a lot better. He's T6, T26 in his last couple of starts. They call him world's greatest driver. That's been his nickname since college, like for a reason. The guy is absolutely insane with the driver, hits a lot of these driver off the decks too, kind of little spin, a little bit more or less dispersion when he hits those. And so he's had a real kind of up and down year. He's missed 4 cuts in a row on 2 different occasions, but has finally found that momentum. And I'm going to go really far down, 6,600, a guy who probably no one has heard of, but I watched him actually play at the Junior Invitational at Sage Valley when he was 17 years old, and that's Marco Penge. He's an Englishman, was kind of billed as maybe the next big thing, and he had a really serious knee injury a few years ago, ended up coming back from that, qualified for the Open Championship last year at Royal Liverpool. I think a lot of people maybe are into the new dad bump. He just had a kid, so maybe there's a little bit extra quote-unquote perspective there for Marco Penge, and he's 14th right now in strokes gained off the tee on the DP World Tour. So I think there's a guy who not a lot of people are going to pick, and it could pay off big. And then that will give you some flexibility to go with Ali Toasty or Pearson Coody, get some of those guys in that high 7,000 who, again, are prolific drivers of the golf ball.
Absolutely. I love your picks. I actually want to just shout out the Rico Hoey pick because he was going to be on my card. I still haven't made the final decision. Plus 3,500. I feel like the price is right. He's better than a lot of guys that are kind of in that 30 to 1 to 40 to 1 price range. But Brentley, thank you so much for joining and stepping in for the co-host. You did a phenomenal job. I think we're going to cash some tickets and make some money in DFS this week. Anybody listening and watching, make sure you check out NBCSports.com for more help with your wagers. Again, for Brentley Romine, and I'm Brad Thomas. Have a wonderful day. Take care.